Okay, so now we are getting to probably what you expect it to be in these videos. So we're going to start dealing with, the hand and wrist side of this meridian system. So a couple really quick and easy things, and they're good warm-ups if you're just doing these stretches without having warmed up your body at all. Obviously, warming up brings blood and heat allow us to bring more energy to these stretches, and the heat also makes our muscles a little bit more malleable. So, very simply, it doesn't really matter what position you have your hand in. Thumb circles. That's it. And for when you have a lot of tension in this area, and again, we talked about that as like a marma point, which is basically an area where prana gets trapped. We all have them between our thumb and our index finger. So doing this can sort of just help bring prana into that area and have it spread out, I guess is how I would think of it. So when I say it doesn't really matter what we're doing with this hand, I mean, it's good to have your index finger straight because that's really, that's the system that we're working with. So a very simple thing that you can do wherever, but it doesn't really matter what position your hands are in, but you do want to have your index fingers straight. And it's probably helpful to just have your other fingers straight along with them. But that's it, and that's very useful. Another thing to do, and this is a good warm-up, and it's a really great wrist stretch after any poses where we're going to be doing arm balances, such as crow. We're going to interlace our fingers, then hug your forearms together. Elbows probably won't quite touch, but then we're just going to rotate them. So that's about it. And that's going to bring some heat and some blood flow to these wrist areas that we're going to then stretch a little bit more deeply. Of course, we can go both sides. And, I started with my left thumb over my right thumb. You can switch and then do it again. You'll probably feel a little more tight on one side than the other. Things often do, unless you're ambidextrous or just incredibly balanced in your body. Okay, so that's a nice little warm-up. Okay, so I'm going to do these basically from easy to hard. This you can actually think of as this is a good sequence to lump these poses into. We're going to do wrist rolls. Now, the important thing for these is keeping our arm straight. It doesn't mean that we're locking our elbow out, but we want it straight. And if you feel pain anywhere in this whole system while you're doing that, while we're keeping the arm straight, just use the opposite arm to support. First, we're going to do it with our thumb between our index and middle finger. And there's no real magic number here, but that's all. I tend to think of there being almost like an axle going from my ulnar bone, which is this little bumpy guy here, to the other side of my wrist. So it's almost like I'm just rotating that axle. And if we think about it like that, we're going to tend to isolate our wrists so that we're not using a lot of our other muscles here. So that's really it. We're just keeping this whole system straight but not locked, and then we're rotating the wrist. And I did say we're doing it with our thumb there. You can do it without thumb placed between the fingers to start if you want, but it's really good to just kind of do each one in turn. And the reason for that, as I'd mentioned in an earlier video, is that as we work along the line of different fingers, we're really going to be touching more subtly different sides of that system along our shoulder blades. Actually, I did say that in an earlier video, but that was one of the ones that didn't record. So more on that later. Okay. So you can do that as much as you want. You can also do it, and it's going to just work the system a little bit differently. Arm out to the side. Now again, my arm is straight, right? And if I'm doing my arm out to the side, my elbow pit here is basically going to be square to the wall in front of me. That one, in case you did not know what I meant. And again, each finger at a time, right? Both directions. You can also do it above your head. You can't see my wrist, but I'm just doing the same thing. And so let's just say we were currently operating between our pinky finger and our ring finger. You can even do it in an arc coming up. But notice how my hips and chest are staying squared. I'm not really like moving, I'm not moving my torso like this, right? Because that's going to be more of a side body stretch. We're really just trying to isolate this. So keeping your hips and chest square is always important. So you can do that on both sides. You know, I don't need to spend more memory here on this video recording doing that. That's basically what we're going to do, and on either side. So again, arms straight. You can support if you need to. You can do it out in front. You can do it to the side. You can come up in an arc. I recommend all of them because it's all just going to work this area differently. It's just, you know, you're just kind of playing with your own body and seeing what's going to work. So this is just sort of like a general template where good posture is built in, and then, you know, it's up to you to just kind of explore that from there. Let's see, what else? I think that's it for that one. So finally, we're going to get into the stretch that we were doing at the bar. So heel of your thumb, heel of your pinky. You're going to want to be pressing them into, again, that wall. The wall right in front of you, right? And from the side, you're going to want to make sure that your fingers are coming as close to perpendicular to the floor as possible. Now, it might not happen all the way. It might be like this, but that's what you're angling towards. So probably won't be there right now, and that's okay. So that's what I'm doing. So you saw it from all sides. Now, I mentioned heel of the thumb and heel of the pinky. Once you have that, continue that line of energy down your pinky. Continue it out the length of your thumb. And we're also going to place some focus into this index finger here. So more so when we're pulling certain fingers back. Elbow pit is going to be facing the ceiling. So we're not moving, our arm is not like that, and our arm is not like that. You know, the bicep side of the arm with the elbow pit and the inner forearm are all facing the ceiling. So what you might want to do to start is just pulse. And again, I'm keeping that energetic line engaged. Pinky, heel of the pinky, heel of the thumb, thumb, index finger. I'm keeping that engaged, and it's like I'm pressing that into an imaginary wall. So you can pulse a little bit, and then you're just going to want to pull back. Now, this is something I just assume is true for everyone. But what happens for me is when I'm pulling my pinky finger back, I tend to feel that a little bit more on the outer side of my shoulder blade, as well as like this little, I mean, if your armpit is a hole, right, this is kind of like the cap to it, like this little bit on the outside right here. So I tend to feel it more on that side. And as I move from finger to finger, I say finger to finger, but I should say pinky side to my thumb side, I'm going to increasingly feel it a little bit more working towards the muscles between my shoulder blades. I still feel it on all of them, on any of these stretches. But that's, you know, those are the lines you're going to want to think of engaging. At some point, if you're just holding your hand out, maybe placing your left hand here, and you want to think of relaxing. So this is, I'm not sure if this camera takes into account inverted sides or not, but this is my right hand. So I'm placing my left hand on top of the right side of my collarbone, and I'm just thinking of relaxing that. And, you know, I think that you should probably feel some engagement, basically, you know, this whole shoulder blade area in the right side all throughout the stretch. So here it is, you know, on the side, right? I mean, I will often hold it probably between 5 and 10 breaths, really. To start, that might be too much. And like I said, pulsing might be pretty good to start, but just be aware of your breath. Um, One thing that you can think about with breath too is that if you're trying to release an area of tension, it's better to have your exhale longer than your inhale. And the reason for that is that helps engage your parasympathetic nervous system that is related to your fight or flight response, and it disengages that. So if you've been activated into fight or flight, which let's face it, a lot of modern living, we're just kind of stuck there all the time anyways. Exhale longer than your inhale is going to help engage your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the antidote to being stuck in fight or flight. Super. Okay. So when you actually get to the index finger, I tend to hold that a little bit longer than the other fingers, or what I might do is I might do index finger, and then I might do my thumb, and then I'll come back to the index finger because I really want to be focusing on, creating some greater degree of flexibility in that whole system right there. So, and then when we do the thumb, now obviously the thumb is not positioned the same way as our other fingers. So when we're pressing this, right, this is coming out to the side. So what that line is, that's basically just what I'm going to pull back on. And when I'm pulling the thumb back, I'm going to think of making sure that my index finger is pointing as straight down as possible. So it's not coming over here or here. It's not coming like this. Just straight down. Yeah. And there's almost, for me, and I imagine if you work hard enough to get deep enough into this system, that you're almost going to feel like a rotation here on the top of your shoulder blade, almost as if it's curving like out and down and in. It's kind of a hard thing to describe, but it's sort of the same thing that happens if you're doing pigeon to your hips. It sort of rotates a lot of muscles so that this is kind of like going, yeah, it's curving this way and it's curving in. If it makes sense, great. If it doesn't, oh well. Maybe it will at some point in the future. So that's basically those stretches, and you can play around with those. Unlike the previous one, I always do them out in front. So yeah, I mean, I think that's it, and hopefully you will find some relief with these. Oh, perhaps before closing too, I think we had talked about at the bar, but I know I mentioned in this video that there's being like a marma point here, right? So you can always massage this whole area too. Once you find that really tense point, you'll know. And you can just kind of pulse it. Pulsing is really considered the best way to approach working with blocked marma points. The idea is because you have all this stuck energy in this certain area, and it needs to flow. So if we're just going to hold it, we're kind of trapping it. So it's almost like you're acting like a pump to like pump some of this energy that's just been stuck there and releasing it throughout the whole system. For me, I find that in addition to that center point of tension, I like to really start about on this knuckle of my index finger on the inside here. Well, I'm really thinking of, it won't work. Okay. Massaging from here all the way through, and then the inside of my thumb. And that can be a nice way to get some relief there as well. Marma points are often conceptualized much like an epicenter of an earthquake. So again, an earthquake has, well, an epicenter, as I just said, but the surrounding areas are affected as well. So too with marma points. So anywhere you're working in that system, you can get some relief. Obviously, the most relief is going to happen at the epicenter, but that's often the area that's also the most sensitive. So if you're ever having too much sensitivity, you can work the surrounding areas, and it's still going to provide some relief to the epicenter indirectly. The other thing that you can do to really stretch out this area is, so if we're hugging our fingers together, just pressing your thumbs into one another. I like to do it in front of my sternum because it helps keeps my shoulders square. And you just press, and that's it. And that's going to really help, again, stretch out this sort of L or gun or whatever shape you want to imagine it to be. That's going to help. And then we just switch. And that's all. And that can be a nice quick stretch if you've really tightened up there. I also feel it here in this little part of my chest, because again, these are systems. They're all related. It's very much a corporal butterfly effect. So that's all. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful. Yeah, Om Shanti. May peace be with you.